Hello and welcome to Kain and Company here on the CBT Automotive Network. My name is David Kain, and today I'm joined for part two of my conversation with John Malishenko, the Chief Operating Officer of the Germain Motor Company. In the last show, we talked about the Germain Motor Company core values, what makes them different, how they go to market, how they handle recruitment, retention of employees. But today we're going to get into the nitty-gritty of what are the challenges in today's automotive retail environment. So John, welcome back to the show, and I am really excited about continuing this conversation. So let's get right to that question of what in the heck is this thing called online retailing? Because I thought that's what the internet was when it started in 1996 and now all the iterations, but now everybody's saying it's finally time for customers to buy cars online. And what's with you dealers? How come you can't get it together?
Yeah, well, it seems like a lot of people feel that way, especially the manufacturers. But I find it fascinating, and I think that's the key, right? You either embrace or you resist, and then we've chosen to fully embrace it, which means not being comfortable every day. In fact, it means being uncomfortable a lot because we get into areas that we've never been in before. We have to trust subject matter experts and partners from outside the dealership to navigate this territory. So the willingness and ability to collaborate and trust and work openly with partners is a big part of our focus, and also realigning our cultures and our people and our processes, right? It's a major re-engineering. So we're doing it a bit at a time. It's not something, we have very different markets and very different franchises, and I think the transition, the timing of it is unique with each store. It's not something we're going to centralize, but we're on our way and we're moving forward and we're having success. So it means different things to everybody, but ultimately it's whatever our customers with that franchise and that market want. And I can assure you what my Honda customers or VW customers in Ann Arbor want is very different than what my BMW or Lexus customers in Naples, Florida want. So it is a unique strategy.
So what goes into it? So when you start putting these planets in the universe, I realize technology has to be there, and that's right. Not just what the consumers use. We know they're on mobile, so that's pretty simplistic. Right. But what about your team? How do you get them equipped for this? I'm a big fan and a big believer in A to Z, and I think ultimately, having the shop group sort of invented it, perfected it. There's others that have moved in that direction, but one person, one price, 1 hour. I mean, you're not going to find a tagline or an overall definition of strategy or process that better, in my opinion, defines what the market is looking for. One relationship, one person that can guide the entire process, getting it done within the timeframes that the customer wants, and eliminating, for the most part, the negotiation, so that the focus can be on the relationship, selecting the right vehicle, and all those aspects of the ownership experience that extend beyond the transaction. You're just laying a foundation there because we're after retention and loyalty. I think the process can drive that if it aligns with what the customer's needs, and I believe it's A to Z. Well, I couldn't agree with you more, and I know from my own retailing background that customers love having someone they can rely on. They love not having to bounce around the dealership and have different closers and people come in a modern environment. And you and I, as automotive professionals, we have to accept the reality that from a gross advancement standpoint or maybe market share gain to push units that have to be sold, those models probably still work. What is very frustrating in today's environment as a trainer is when you try to introduce new concepts like that and you're trying to push the market forward in favor of what the consumer wants, dealers are still selling 17 million cars, so what's up? Why change?
Yeah, well, I think this is something personally we want to be ahead of. I don't want to be reacting because it's changed rather suddenly in the last couple of years. You said earlier people thought it was going to come much sooner.
It's taken a bit of time to gain some momentum, but the momentum is huge. I mean, we see dramatic shifts year to year in consumer behavior and how our digital marketing strategies are performing. And you know, it's so, I've heard the people call it the Amazonification of retail, but you know, everywhere in people's existence, right? This process they're looking for is the norm. We're the only ones that really stand out. So you know, we're being isolated, and so I think the urgency is coming from that. At least that's what I sense. I feel like it's time. I knew of A to Z 2 years ago. Didn't feel like it was quite at a point where it was worth the risk to the enterprise. I don't feel that way anymore.
Yeah, I can imagine. Well, I do want to compare taglines. I think yours is quite good. The right price, the right car, the right way. And I know when you were explaining that to me years ago, you were really under the feeling that Germain needed to be ahead of the curve. The market was going to change, and I applaud you all for your all's persistence on being cutting edge. And I happened to listen to the Mike and Mike show on my morning drive. And I've noticed, interesting enough, I not only am a trainer in the industry, a consultant, but I also am a student of it. And I pay attention to things like companies that just moved into your state, in your city, Carvana. And
right.
What I'm hearing on Sirius each morning is BP. And some of those companies are creating national awareness of these programs that are going to force dealers to have to change. And what's interesting about it, and I know you're going to have a comment on this, they're going after our big profit center, which is used cars, and we can't sit there and let that happen. So right. Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on both those topics.
Yeah, no, I'm familiar with both those organizations. I think they're another strong indication, their success of why the time is now. To make changes. I was recently at a meeting in Chicago and heard a representative from Sonic speak to the Echo Park stores in Denver, yes. and the changes there. Another great example, right? Even though it's being done within a traditional public organization. But what's unique about all those organizations is they did it from the ground up, right? They had a blank slate. So they were able to go in and hire people and define the process and even the facilities uniquely to the needs of the market. The challenge for us is we have to retrofit existing cultures, and that is a much tougher job. And in fact, you know, I think as Sonic tries to roll this out to existing cultures, which they plan to do, I think the experience will be much different. So, you know, again, I think those are great indications of why now is the time to change. It is still primarily focused in the used car piece, but I embrace, you know, those competitors. You know, when TrueCar came into the market and there was so much, you know, so much disagreement about their relevance or whether they were good or not, you know, we chose to embrace them just because we wanted to keep them close to understand if the consumers liked it, you know, we needed to understand it. I didn't love what it was doing to our margins or for our business, as nobody did. But at some point, you know, we're open to everything and attached to nothing. So we see the success of Carvana and BP and Echo Park. That gave me the confidence to start to make these changes. And in 2017, we're going to roll 2 stores into A to Z. And, you know, up to now, we hadn't done that. So they're great catalysts.
Excellent. Well, I'm glad to hear you say that. What's interesting as you look at the market, there are a lot of people who are going to say it's going to be the big publics that are going to make the change. My personal opinion is it's going to be these mid-sized groups like the Germains, the Champs, that are going to go out there and create something that becomes a model, because most stores still are small to mid-size, and that's what most consumers see. It's that Ford sign when they roll into a small town, the Chrysler sign, the Toyota sign, and that's what they're known for. They don't look at these corporations. They look at the Steve Germains and the Champ organizations.
One of the things, this is sort of a secret that I was hoping to keep to myself, but I think we have a unique advantage because of our size and because we're autonomous. You know, when you're heavily centralized and very big, it's hard to. This is an entrepreneurial model. I think very much one of the advantages we have is we can make decisions quickly. We can change directions quickly. We have adaptable organizations that embrace change. It doesn't take a year to turn directions. It doesn't require 5 meetings to get something done. And I think this requires tremendous adaptability, tremendous creativity. So we've tried to build cultures that can embrace that. So I do think we have an advantage because of our size, but we're big enough that we have leverage, we have relationships with our key partners, and we found them very willing and very supportive of our efforts. So, I'm excited to be, who we are and where we are within this. And again, I believe that there has to be a strong degree of autonomy, the connection with the customer and the sense of ownership when you go to execute these new strategies is critical.
So John, just for the fun of it, let's talk some Big Ten football. Here I know you're at your Honda store in Ann Arbor. Your headquarters are there in Columbus with Ohio State. So Harbaugh and Urban Meyer, they obviously have lunch together and go hang out and stuff. What's it like with your all's crews to go back and forth on these rivalries?
It is to say it is awkward is an understatement. When we purchased these stores in Ann Arbor, there were a lot of our close friends in Columbus that questioned our loyalty. And then even worse, when we arrived in Ann Arbor with our Columbus pedigree, right, that was not the warmest welcome that you could imagine. But I'll tell you the truth. Despite being an Ohio born and bred and a Buckeye fan, Ann Arbor's a great town, and we've gotten to know the folks at the University of Michigan. And despite our biases, right, they're both amazing institutions and great organizations. We've gotten to know both coaches and their staff, and both very impressive organizations, and both and we got options, right? Whatever happens, right, we'll go left or right. But no, it's all right, Ann Arbor's an awesome market to do business in, as is Columbus, which is where our home is. But we feel honored and proud to be involved in both markets.
Good for you. John, thank you so much for taking the time with me today. I know we've covered a lot of diverse topics on these 2 shows. I look forward to having you down in Lexington at some point in the future where we can talk more and get on that whiteboard and do some planning, okay?
I look forward to it, David. Thanks for the opportunity.
You're very welcome. And thank you all very much for joining John and I today here on Kain & Company. And I look forward to seeing you again next time here on the CBT Automotive Network.